hey, welcome to another episode of the Church Leadership Lab. We are glad to have you with us, whether you're listening, whether you're watching. I am one of your hosts, Scott, and we have our other host, Casey. Casey, how are you?
I'm so good. How are you?
I'm so good as well. Casey and I did not coordinate. If you're watching this, we did not coordinate both wearing black. It just so happened. So we don't do outfit coordination here.
Man, we should.
We should. We'll put it on the brainstorm for the next round. Today, so myself and Casey were here with you, and today we also have with us Jessica Moore. Jessica's worked in digital giving space for almost 5 years, has a passion for biblical stewardship, really helping church leaders identify, communicate, really find out why we should give, and has tons of expertise in digital giving tools, how-tos. She's wife, mom of 2 awesome kids in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Jessica, hello and welcome.
Hello, I'm so happy to be here.
Yes, I apologize. We did not give you the memo to wear a black sweater as well next time.
Yeah, I need a dress code next time I join you guys.
Yeah, we're getting sharper on our end, so we'll get that next time for sure. Jessica, one thing I'd love to start off with. I'm always curious about this. There's the bio snippet that everyone has, right? That like would go on the back of the book cover or whatever it might be. But there's always something that like doesn't make that all your friends, all your family might know. And so what's that one thing for you?
Well, Casey knows this, but I am French Canadian. So we moved to the U.S. when I was 5. So, and then I grew up in Florida. So that was a huge culture shift, weather-wise and all things wise.
What part then of Canada did you move from?
Montreal.
Okay. Montreal to Florida.
Yeah. And I grew up in Florida, but then I moved to Tulsa. So another radical shift there.
Yeah. You got the whole tour going on.
Yeah.
So do you speak French?
I do. Yes. Yeah.
We should do the whole podcast in French. We could pull up Google Translate.
You should do it. We would just listen quietly. It'd be a very quiet podcast.
Yeah. Little treat for all our French listeners today. Oh, that's awesome. Well, that's the perfect thing to share in that. So I appreciate you doing that.
Yeah, totally.
Would love to just kind of to dive into it. Obviously, the goal of our podcast is to help church leaders cultivate healthy churches. And so there's a lot wrapped up in that, a lot involved in that. But certainly a huge part of that is generosity, is stewardship, is giving. Not only how you do that, but, like we mentioned, why you do that, all of that. So, would love to jump into that. I think that when I think about that, obviously there's just needs that need to be met, right? A church has those. And then there's often vision, mission that you're looking towards where it's like, okay, we need to see, giving increase, or we need to try and go raise this kind of money, increase giving. So especially when we maybe jump in there, what are some things in working with churches for as long as you have that you've seen some of those misconceptions around increasing giving, growing generosity? Does anything kind of come to mind when you think about that?
100%. I think it's still so taboo in a lot of churches to talk about giving, whether that be, like you said, practical need. Like what do we actually need to keep our doors open and our lights on? I think that's one part of it. And that can feel a little bit uncomfortable. I think that might communicate that you're not, operating with excellence as a business. If you're that transparent to say, hey, we need you guys to give so we can keep the lights on, right? But I think that the overall communication strategy doesn't have to be uncomfortable or awkward or forced. I think that if you can rally around your why. So why? Okay, you need to keep your doors open and your lights on, but why do you need to keep your doors open and lights on? How does your ministry impact your community? And then that vision, I think, is a lot more inviting and people want to get on board. They want to be a part of something bigger. But I think in general, I coached for a really long time, just one-on-one with customers when I initially started. And it was just so fascinating to me, the amount of not always pastors, but just staff that I would speak to, church staff that I would speak to, who genuinely would say like, oh, well, we can't ask our givers to pay our processing fee, or how do we communicate this giving platform without talking about giving? It just seemed so crazy to me that they were so uncomfortable with giving. But then on the flip side, being a church attendee, right, and being involved at my church, when I started working in the digital giving space, it radically changed our generosity, because I became acutely aware of what this tool provided. And then with our consistent generosity, we saw radical shift in our family and our personal finances. So now I come at it from two ends, like, talk about this because it's something that is important for your givers to do. And also you need to operate as a business. And so let's do that and not be, and, shy away from it. But then two, on the flip side, you are literally robbing your congregation of incredible blessing if you don't provide that opportunity. So I think there's two aspects there that can kind of nullify that awkwardness and that taboo factor. But I think it does take some mental adjustment, especially, speaking to maybe some more traditional churches or churches that have just been around for a really long time. And it's somewhat generational, I think, too. So it's a neat opportunity to be able to work in this space and have those conversations in a practical sense, and just kind of shake them up a little bit. Like, it's okay to talk about this. I think that's really important, actually. So,
When Jess, you just said a really important word that I know you and I talked about recently, is practicality. So I'm a big fan of that word. Like, we can talk around things, but then I walk away going, yeah, but how?
Yeah.
I really want you to tell me how. Like, literally tell me step 1, step 2, click here, say this, copy that. So I know that you personally are just a very generous person of your time, your talents, and even your finances. But taking that super practically, what is low-hanging fruit? What are some actual practical steps to increase generosity, are in ways that a lot of people may not know? As an insider who now understands the practical side, the software, the technology, what are some practical things that maybe not a lot of church leaders would know that is just low-hanging fruit that they can't even see?
Yeah, I will, without a doubt, the number one thing is recurring giving, automatic giving. It takes there's so many things. It's more practical for your givers. It allows your church to budget. So across the board, it is 1,000% something that you should be promoting every single week. And just, again, allowing or providing that opportunity for them to be faithful stewards. That's a direct biblical commandment. So you're providing an easy, convenient way for them to fulfill this calling. I think that if you are not consistently communicating that, again, you are doing a disservice to your congregation. That's my humble opinion. Yeah. That's the lowest hanging fruit to me. I feel like it's literally easy. And again, it provides your church some opportunity to be able to budget really well.
I like to call recurring giving automatic faithfulness.
Yeah, I love that.
Ooh.
It's just like, I don't even have to think about it. There's plenty of obedience and following Jesus that I got to put a lot of energy towards. Well, but if I just turn that recurring giving on, automatic faithfulness, we're good to go.
Seriously though, for real, Scott. And here's the interesting thing. I knew that was always an option, right? So every church that we attended, and we've been at the same church now for I don't know, 6 years. No, I don't know. Anyway, we have been at this church for a while. And since we've been at this church, I've started working in this space. And it wasn't until I started working here that I realized how easy it was to do recurring giving. Not in the sense that it's easy because you're not remembering. Yes, that's definitely a part of it, but setting it up, is very easy as well. And so maybe some of the intimidation factor there in communicating is, well, let me go a different direction. When I'm having these conversations with these church staff members, a lot of times, 9 times out of 10, it's generally a finance person, right? If I do get the opportunity to sit down and talk with a pastor or someone that is preaching from the pulpit, and they can literally process a gift in real time with me over the phone, they're like, that was so easy. I'm like, yes, it was so easy. It is so easy. And this is what that empowers them to be able to communicate it well. Right. So I think some of it is understanding the software that you're using and the tools that you're using to be able to facilitate that faithful, what did you call it? Faithful, give it faithful. Automatic faithfulness. I love that. Yeah. So just the practicality of that. And then kind of back to what you were saying, Casey, too, like we actually do offer scripts for ministry leaders to communicate this from the pulpit. Like, how do you talk about recurring giving? We've got a 4-course class, 4 courses that you can go through to talk about recurring giving from real pastors who have done it. So we have some practical tools that can help you along the way if you need help, but then definitely know your software, and always promote recurring giving to the benefit of your givers.
That's really good. I'm curious too, like in your experience, because even a couple of things you said earlier, it made me think about, like I wonder how many people sort of like there's a lot of intention that we'll put into services, into times of gathering, whether you're a big church, small church, like whatever it might be. Like hopefully, at least you think about, okay, what are we going to do when we come together? Like you put a lot of thought towards that, and then outside of a gathering, to small groups, to outreach, to discipleship, to like all sorts of things. So do you feel like you've seen more that giving and generosity is something that's sort of like, oh yeah, we need to do that too. And it's like not necessarily what's our strategy, what's our philosophy, what's our convictions, what are, like, have you seen a whole lot of that? Or do you find it's more like kind of like, oh yeah, we should probably pass a plate, or I don't know if people do that anymore after COVID, but
Yeah. I think it's still out there.
Yeah.
It's a dying situation, but I think there's a few out there.
Yeah, I'm sure there are.
For real. Yes. To answer your question, I definitely feel like it's an afterthought or part of the announcements, or, I think it's just kind of routine. I think if it defines part of your culture, right? So my church, we are introducing people to the real Jesus. And then generally speaking, once they have this mission statement and we've practiced it and we've rehearsed it and then we've heard it a million times, right? There's practical ways that we do that back up introducing people to the real Jesus. If that's our mission statement across the board, then when you talk about giving, it's a segue. This is part of how we introduce people to the real Jesus. Here's an opportunity for you to do this with your finances. I think ideally, that should be the norm. It is not. But yeah, that should be I think that, and that just feels like the easiest and the most natural way. And at the end of the day, most churches, that is the case. That is the case. If they need money to keep their doors open, it's because someone has a heart for that community or whatever mission they have, but they need money to do it. And I don't understand why we feel like it's so awkward to just be like, hey, I need money to do this thing that I really want to do, that I care about, that God has called me to do.
Well, we talked about this intentionality, right? This is just a part of our service, just like you mentioned, Scott, like making announcements, and then we do this, and then this. It's like the agenda. Something that shifted my perspective on asking for money, raising an offering a long time ago, was thinking about the heart of God, like the character of God. And by nature, he is generous. So participating in a moment of giving was as sacred as a moment of worship. I'm worshiping God with my faithfulness, with my obedience, with my biblical stewardship. We talked about that earlier. So as a communicator, if I'm giving someone the opportunity to worship God with their tithe and offering, and I always offer the opportunity to worship God through song, through music, offering a worship of my finances, how is that any different? And when we don't make it different, man, it's a no-brainer. So of course that's part of our service. And then to Jess's point, it's part of our culture. It's part of who we are in our community.
Yeah.
Why would I not offer that? And not only not offer it, but it's never an afterthought. It's an invitation to worship a sacred God who is a generous God himself. That changes the heart of it.
Yeah.
And that kind of shifted it for me too. Like, man, I'm worshiping with my faithfulness, like just like I would sing or play an instrument. Man, that's pretty cool.
Yeah. I think too, the other piece, because that's like I don't know, I have the image of like a push and a pull. So like that's heading towards something like really good, right? Like faithfulness, like going after God with faithfulness with our finances. I think the other, like, it's like the different side of the coin that I think of too is my wife and I were just talking the other night how scripture says, it doesn't say money is the root of all evil. It says the love of money. And we were just talking about, like, I was going off on a tangent, like, you could see it like all over the place, but my point is giving money away, I think really helps like break any of those little chains that might be forming in the love of it. And in sort of and again, like, it's not wrong to have money. It's not wrong to have a lot of resources, to use those resources. I mean, we see that we have, books of the Bible because somebody who is wealthy essentially commissioned them. And so it's not speaking to that at all, but it's just this regular act of breaking those ties. And I think that's another way to think about, like, you're inviting people into that. And just like you would do that with, hey, I want you to, with so many other areas in life, I think as we're talking about like building healthy churches are filled with healthy disciples. And I think that holistic health certainly includes finances and being really, ready and willing to kind of talk about that.
Yeah, that's so good. We recently had a sermon, year-end giving. So obviously it's a focal point for churches towards the end of the year. And our church just did a sermon, and it was radically different than most sermons I've heard about giving. And that was the heart behind it, Scott. Was like, our pastor literally at one point was like, we don't necessarily need your money to keep our doors open. We need you to be a healthy church. We need you to be someone who does not allow money to be your God, your anxiety point. It was, and that was so refreshing and convicting at the same time to know that, like, okay, why is it so difficult for me to release this? Why is it so difficult for me to like understand this concept that it's not mine to start with? It is God's money. We just need to return it to him. But then also that tension of trusting, like, it's the end of the year. Christmas is coming up. Finances are tight right now. So 100%. It is the physical act of obedience in posturing your heart towards not allowing money to be your God or the root of all evil, right? That's so good. Yeah.
Yeah. What is like technology's role playing this? Obviously, we've talked about a little bit of whether it's, processing something online, but I think that, especially there's all sorts of things I think about when I think of technology and giving and stewardship and generosity. I mean, how have you seen that sort of make impact, especially as people might adopt? Obviously, a lot of people, if you didn't have online giving already before 2020, you probably do now. But there's even, I think, more ways to kind of embrace that. But anyway, what have you seen in, again, coaching churches, how to really like use that well?
Sure. Really quick, as far as 2020 is concerned, I cannot tell you how many churches I met with, because at that time I was still doing onboarding and direct coaching with with customers. And we had so many customers on the other end of it, right? Because there was obviously an influx of folks that needed it. So we were onboarding like massive groups of people at a time. And it was overwhelming, but I really enjoyed the one-on-one coaching, just to literally hear like, hey, what are your needs as a church? And then let's build off of that. Whereas now we were kind of working in masses, right? So like everybody needs to understand the basics of X, Y, and Z. But after that peak kind of started to slow down a little bit. And even more so, like a year later, we've still got these sweet customers. We've built relationships with them. And we get to a place now where people are starting to consider reopening their doors and restarting services. And we had so many church administrators and pastors say, this literally saved our church. Having this functionality literally saved our church. We would not have been able to, reopen without having this option. So that was really cool to be able to, I don't know, it's just really, it's an honor to be a tiny piece of what God can continue to do in those churches despite what happened. So that's number one. And then number two, just practically speaking, I think that from what I've been told by church leaders, it's a little bit more difficult to have the younger generation really engaged in generosity. And so meeting them where they're at, I think is really important. Providing an opportunity for them to give on their phone. They're already on their phone, right? So via text giving or online. And we just there's so much more functionality in just sharing the giving form itself. I think that practically speaking, it just allows giving. It's easier to communicate giving. Yes. And then two, you can seize an opportunity that you might otherwise miss if someone doesn't have a checkbook or doesn't have cash handy. We usually all have our phones on us. And so in those moments where they are prompted to give, because whether the Holy Spirit is on their hearts, or we do work with some nonprofit organizations as well, and there's whatever cause you're communicating is super resonating with them, you have the opportunity to collect a gift in that moment of sensitivity, which we all know is important. It really is important. And two, that act of obedience. If the Holy Spirit's literally pressing on their hearts, like, you have actually made this a God over me. And then you have that realization, you're like, okay, Lord, I'm ready to let it go. Like being able to be obedient instantaneously. And then two, just on the back end for churches it makes their lives so much easier as well. Streamlining reporting and, depositing into bank accounts, allowing different payment methods. If folks don't want to give with credit card, if they are not interested in perpetuating that, they have the option to give with ACH. So just a lot of options and ease across the board, ease for givers, ease for church staff. Functionally speaking, I think that's the best part of it. It's just easy.
Yeah, that's good.
Well, Jess, you have served churches and church leaders for 5 years-ish. In those years, I wish we could have a way to find out how many phone calls, emails, webinars, like if there's a way to put an actual number of how many church leaders you've connected with, that would be pretty interesting, or overwhelming, good or bad. I'm not really sure. But in all of those years and all of those phone calls, there have to be at least a few stories that have stuck with you or really just impacted your heart as a coach. You're like, man, that's it. Like, that's exactly what this is. This is why I come to work every day. This is why I do this. Are there any stories of just radical generosity or that biblical stewardship, that automatic faithfulness, any of those things from a generosity perspective, you go, man, that is a story I will not forget for a long time? Yeah.
Well, one of them I kind of alluded to earlier. There is one specific administrator that he's just my bud and I just love him. Casey knows who I'm talking about. He was one of those folks that they switched to online. They did not have digital giving at all before COVID. They purchased during COVID out of desperation, honestly. And on the back end of it, now he doesn't even allow church members to give outside of digital giving. It's just too much paperwork, too much work. And the ease of it and the convenience of it trumps everything. However, he was one of those folks that has repeatedly said to me, I'm so thankful for this tool And I'm so thankful for your team. I'm so thankful for you for having patience to teach me how to use this and how to use it well and how to communicate it. And I think that's a part of why I have such a friendship with him, is because he's invited me into what a blessing it has been for their ministry, not just like, how do I turn on donor cover fees option? It's not been just a coaching session. It's been like, we end up having conversations about all sorts of things. And so he is my friend. And so in that, I've learned, how this has provided for their church and for them to be able to stay open. And they do incredible work within their community. They have a Thanksgiving dinner every year. They do utilize our tool and our sign up slot form to be able to facilitate that for their volunteer side of things, like who is going to be here to volunteer during these shifts. And then two, the order form that folks can order, they literally give away these Thanksgiving dinners. So there's no financial transaction involved, but facilitating an event that large, I mean, they're giving away like 200 full Thanksgiving dinners. So that's just, I don't know, that's a really cool one. And then another one is I had a chance to work. This was one of the very first accounts I worked with. And it was so hard because they were doing a race fundraiser. I think it was like a 5K or something. And admittedly, our forms now have a lot more functionality than they did back then. But at that time, I had to be really creative to help him facilitate the fundraising for this race. And sure. I had no idea what type of impact it would have, but it ended up being like a huge amount of money. And I just remember being blown away because it was the same type of thing where I had built a relationship and a friendship with this guy because we were it was so difficult to make this form work the way that we needed it to work at that time, because that's not what we're really created to do, is like facilitate fun runs and 5Ks.
5K fun runs.
But it was a really
Jessica
cool, well, we could do it. We could do it. I'm here to say that it can happen. And we did. And it was awesome. And so I think just seeing then his celebration and knowing why this organization exists and the family that it impacted, and seeing pictures of the child that was, the funds were being raised for. And I don't know, it's very fulfilling. It's just a teeny tiny piece of it, but I don't know. It's fun to be something bigger.
Yeah. Well, and what I hear too, like, is it's not even like obviously software technology, like all of that's important, but like it's really about the end goal, which is those few stories that we have thousands of like really it's about empowering the mission of the churches, the people that we get to work with, and then to see how that spreads and to see the kingdom impact that makes. And I mean, I think it's a really, it's really, really important because ultimately that's what we're excited about. So.
Yeah.
So one question we like to ask, that we like to hear everyone's thoughts on, and I'll keep it simple. I'll just straight up ask it to you. What is a healthy church?
That's such a loaded question. Man,
it is.
That's hard. That's a hard question to answer because I feel like our society has one idea of what that is, but then the New Testament has a very different idea of what that is, right? So I think a healthy church is one, and I'm stealing a little bit from what you said earlier, but is one that has healthy disciples, right? So again, our church, we're just introducing people to the real Jesus. I think if your church can align with who Jesus was while he was on this earth and after, that is a healthy church. We are humans. Like the entire church is just made up of humans from leadership on down. Mistakes are going to be made. We're not perfect, right? But I think if the ultimate goal is to continually realign your mission, your business state, because that's important. God is not chaotic. God is not in debt, right? So if you can align yourself as a business in a way that reflects God's heart, I think that would be a healthy church.
I like it. That's good. All right. We have a closing segment that the working title that we've been going with is the final five. So we're just going to jump into it. It's a little bit rapid fire. So we'll go through these and get your thoughts on it. Okay. All right. First, one book you'd recommend to church leaders.
Pass. I'm not a reader, so I read high school level. I read like Hunger Games, so reading isn't as great.
Well, it's great. That's a great book. Let's not.
It did.
We should establish. I guess. Go ahead. Sorry.
It did not even occur to me that someone would pass. Like Family Feud at the end, or like next. Like that didn't even occur to me as of an option.
That's exactly what I was going to say. I didn't think of that either. And then when you said pass, I was like, well, I guess we got to pass. I feel like she just like determined the rules of engagement, like,
which I kind of love. But you just said you're not a reader, so pass on to number 2. What's the last thing you listened to?
Yeah.
Yes.
Spotify, Apple, anything. You cannot pass 2 times in a row.
No, I will not. I'm happy to answer that. Yeah. I actually was listening to Lauren Daigle's Christmas album. It's so good. That's the last thing I listened to this morning.
Peace. Is that right? No. That's something. There's another one right now called Peace. I can't think what it is, but there's a bunch. They're really good.
Yeah. She is just really good, really talented.
Good time of year for that. Favorite piece of technology you own?
My Apple Watch. I love it.
This podcast is sponsored by Apple. We want to thank them. I'm just kidding. It's not. I'm kidding.
You're gonna have to probably like bleep that out or something. I don't even know if
you
we
work
can say
in the
name.
Apple legal department. That was a complete joke. So. But we do love your products.
All of them.
And other products by other people who make them. So sorry.
All right, Jess, go ahead.
All right, I'll do this one. You do the last one. Quote or advice. Quote. Remember, you already used your pass. You only get 1, 2 for the whole round. We just made that rule up too. Quote or advice that's stuck with you over the years.
So it's actually kind of more recent that I heard this one. So it suits me for the season that I'm in, but truly it suits everybody for every season. If you are doing your best, that's the best you can do. And it's enough. I feel like we're in the Christmas season, really which is why I was listening to Lauren Daigle's Christmas album. And shoot, it's so easy to get caught up in all the stuff that you should be doing right now. And I had a sweet friend just look at me and say, are you doing your best? Are you doing everything you can do right now? And I said, yeah. And she said, then it's enough. I was like, I needed that. Good. Yeah.
I'm stealing that.
Really good.
Yeah.
All right. We're not forcing you to go back to number 1, although there might be like a future Where Are They Now podcast. And it's the only question you're going to get asked.
You have to answer in French.
That's in French. Yes.
Okay.
I love that idea.
So fun. Okay.
All right. Last question, Jess. What is one thing that you would communicate to our audience of church leaders? One thing. And it's not that they're doing their best and their best is enough.
No.
That's pretty good, though.
That's a good thing, though.
It is. No, I think identify your purpose as a church and invite people in on that and do it well and do it often. I think that's probably the number one thing that affects every other aspect of your ministry.
That's really good.
I like it.
That's a good note to end on. Jessica, thank you. Thanks for taking the time to chat with us, to share wisdom that you have, the ways that you've served the church. And we really appreciate it. If you are listening to this, go ahead and I forget to do this often, but go ahead and what are the things you're supposed to say? There's like a podcast thing you say, right? Give it a review.
Like it,
subscribe,
preferably like it.
Like it. Yeah. If you're watching this on YouTube, what do I say? Smash that subscribe button or something like that, right? So
I'm never going to
do the
that.
things. Yeah. Do the things that will help, hopefully get this into the ears of more church leaders that we can serve and encourage and build up. All right. one more question, Jessica. Do you know how would you say church leadership lab in French?
Laboratoire de pasteur d'église.
Man.
Well, I was going to try and say it myself, but that's not going to happen. So I'm going to learn that for next time, because I feel like we should. I'm not even
laboratory.
Nope.
Laboratory. I mean, I guess we could shorten it to lab, but I said laboratory, and that's that's a mouthful.
No, your accent is way cooler than anything else we could say. So those are just a perfect note to end on. Yeah.
I love it. Awesome. Well, thanks for listening, everybody. We will talk to you next time.